Hello. Have you ever felt overwhelmed? You know, those days when there's just too much on your plate. How do you handle times like that? Can be tricky sometimes, can't it? Well, my name is Ian Currey and this is Thinking Out Loud. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Can you see what I'm doing? I found a toy boat and I'm loading it up with treasures. I want to see how much it can carry. What do you think? Do you think it can carry another few of these? No? Oh, well, I do. Let's give it a try. See? No problem. I think it'll take even more. You thought it was going to sink, didn't you? Well, today I'd like to tell you about someone called Samuel Plimsoll. He's a hero of mine. He died a very long time ago and he's buried in a place called Sheraton, which is not far from where I grew up. These days there really isn't much there, well, not much more than marshalling yards for the Channel Tunnel trains. I bet that's interesting though. But at one time, this area was far better known for being of significant military importance. And that's because it's right on the South Downs, beside the coast of England. And the area is supposed to be a great lookout for invading ships. Although, I always associate that part of the country with thick fog. So perhaps something might not have been quite right with the whole lookout idea. So, who was Samuel Plimsoll? And why do I like him? Well, I like to think I have a few things in common with him. First, he left school at a young age, and I was never much good at schoolwork either. And, well, I always wanted to try things out and touch things. I learned far better that way, taking things apart, you know, and putting them back together until I understand exactly what's going on. Well, Mr. Plimsoll was a little like that too. At one time he'd been rather poor, and in later life he would tell people how he had had to live in common lodgings for 7 shillings and twopence a week. I like how he reacted to being so poor though. Eventually he got things together, and as he says, fortunes returned. But as a result of his experience living on so very little, he learned to be sympathetic with the struggles of the poor. And he resolved to devote time and goods to improving their situation. Yeah, I approve. Now, having spent so many years living on a ship, I'm of course really interested in the line on the side of each ship named after him, the Plimsoll line. And this mark on the side of every ship shows how deep in the water the ship can be loaded safely before you need to stop putting things into it. We should have thought about that with my toy boat, shouldn't we? But my toy boat survived me loading a lot into it and shows that you can load more, but not safely. So why is this mark named after him? Well, back when Samuel Plimsoll was alive, certain ships were known as coffin ships. They got this name because they really weren't seaworthy, and although they could be loaded up in port and stay afloat, well, just like my toy boat, the moment a storm hit, the ship would often sink, taking the crew and cargo with it. And the cargo would usually be rather heavily insured, so the owners really didn't mind. Now, Plimsoll's efforts and anger at such bad practice is why the solution, the Plimsoll line, is named after him. The overloaded ships were made safe by sharing the load, taking an extra ship or two, but then preventing the ships becoming overwhelmed when the storm hit, and with the tragic consequences, of course. Now, in life, we often have a lot going on, don't we? letting others come alongside and share the load, just like the ships that prevented the coffin ships taking their crew and cargo to the bottom of the ocean, can sometimes be hard to do. Oh, I've got this. I'll be fine. Thanks, but it'll be okay once I get through this or once I get through that. Now, not allowing others to intervene and help can be as dangerous as taking an overloaded ship to sea. Paul, in his writings to the first century Corinthian church, speaks about this kind of thing. Let me show you. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we were never going to live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God, who raised the dead. And he did rescue us from mortal danger, and he will rescue us again. Do you see there that Paul says, yep, we were crushed and overwhelmed, sinking and beyond our ability to endure. An important thing to take away from this is that Paul also says we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God. Now, as an aside, I love the almost dark humor here. Paul says, yeah, we relied on God, who, by the way, raised the dead. The trust Paul has in God goes on as he says, and he did rescue us from all danger, and he will rescue us again. Now, when I was loading up the toy boat, you were all wondering when it was going to sink, weren't you? I kept loading, but it was able to just about float. And then along came a storm. It would have been sensible to share that load in the first place. But once things go wrong, it can be a lot harder, can't it? But there's something else hiding here. Paul didn't say, yeah, we get in a mess, God bails us out, and we get to sail on until the next storm hits. That sounds like a really bad idea. No, what Paul actually says is, he comforts us in all our troubles. Yeah, now that's great, but look at the rest of what Paul says. He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are in trouble, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. The whole idea here is not to be overwhelmed and get battered, yell for help, and then do the same thing all over again. No. The idea here is to look after each other and show that we care in very practical ways. And when we're struggling, however hard it may be, we must allow others the chance to help when they're willing to do so. When our friends offer help, it may be that that's their way of showing kindness, the kindness that they were shown when they were struggling. Just like Paul, far from being a sign of weakness, accepting help can show we're willing to accept love and kindness, and that will draw us so much closer to our friends and family. Have you ever noticed how the very best helpers sometimes are the most needy? Helping others even when we're overwhelmed can also be a way of getting through things together. Equally, knowing when not to take on more is vital, isn't it? Samuel Plimsoll came up with a very clever way of showing when too much treasure was being loaded into a ship. As people, perhaps we could do with something similar. But until then, Paul reminds us how we can share load and comfort others, even when we may not seem able to do so. If you've enjoyed this video, then go ahead and subscribe. Click that like button, and you can make a comment below. And more than anything, share the link with your friends. Until next time, goodbye.